Hey everyone, welcome to PestPac University. My name is Nick Campanile and I will be your presenter for today. So this is our webinar on PestPac mobile app, the desktop edition for integrated pest management setup, also known as IPM. So this 1 hour webinar is going to walk you through the setup and the use of PestPac when using the IPM module for the mobile application. So just to quickly note, if you are viewing today's course, do know that this additional module is required in addition to your mobile application as well. So if you have both of those things, you're definitely in the right place. So let's jump ahead and start talking about our agenda. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is how to understand the data relationship of IPM-specific information in PestPac. After that, we're going to go through the setup involved in PestPac for proper use of IPM with the mobile app. We will learn how to add location templates to your locations in addition to importing areas from other locations. And then finally, we'll wrap it all up, going through how to use and navigate through all the features available in the IPM module. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to PestPac. And then we're going to dive right into our content. All right, great. So the first thing I wanted to discuss is what is the IPM module? Well, the IPM module is an add-on to your mobile application, and this will allow your technicians to inspect areas and devices at properties. It will allow them to document and track pest activity and pest findings. And then in addition to that, how to actually add and manage conditions that are causing pest problems at the job site. Okay, so those additional features will all be able to communicate into the desktop version of your PestPac software. So because everything is cloud-based, the two are going to talk to each other. So between your mobile device and then through the desktop version. Now, before we get into any of that, there are some data relationship concepts that I wanted to speak about. So first things first is, of course, we'll have to go into our company-wide settings and then turn on some settings to fully unlock this module. And then after that, we're going to go through the lookup tables where we have to populate those first before you can actually populate your IPM-related functions. And then without you actually creating that data population in the lookup tables, your technicians are not going to be able to pick from those options on the mobile app. So we do it first here, then it all becomes available to our technicians into the mobile application. And then from there, you'll see how the data is going to synchronize back and forth as services are being completed. All right, so let's go and jump into the company setup first, where there are two different settings that I want you to turn on first. So if we go to our menu on the top left, settings, and then company setup, let's go into the additional features. That's going to be found under general options and then additional features. Now on the left hand side, we have a subsection for general options. And within here, I would want you to turn on two settings. So we have use conditions module. So to take full advantage of creating conditions, managing conditions, and even adding them from the field, you want to make sure that module is turned on. This is like a module that's part of another module. This module is part of the IPM module. And then below that, we have use device tracking. So in order to take full advantage of your device tracking functionality, so if you use maybe bait stations out in the field, like a rodent bait station or an insect light trap or any of those types of devices, your technicians are going to be able to add those out in the field, they can inspect them, and they can manage them fully. So you want to make sure both of these settings are turned on. Now, once you do that, you definitely want to make sure the mobile application is set up. Now, that's covered in a separate webinar, but I wanted to quickly just revisit that just to ensure we all have an understanding of where that is. So this is going to be found under additional modules, and then we click into PestPac mobile app. So if for whatever reason you don't have this turned on already, make sure you come in, you check the box that says use PestPac mobile app, and then you would choose all of your appropriate settings right below that. Okay, so those are going to be the main settings that we want to enable at the company-wide level. And then now let's start going into our lookup tables. So if I click on Save on the top right, and we're going to jump back to the menu. So we have Menu, Settings, and this time we'll click on Lookup Tables. There are various lookup tables that we're going to talk about today. The first one being your access templates. So these templates ultimately control what your mobile technicians are able to do with not only the mobile application, but also some of the IPM specific functions as well. So I think a good template to work with would be this technician template. Obviously, in your own database, you might be working with another one or maybe multiple templates. We just wanted to cover at a high level what these access rights means, and then how does that translate into using the mobile application. So on the left-hand side here, I'm going to scroll down, and then we're going to run into two different sections for PestPac mobile app options and then PestPac mobile app advanced options. Now we do cover these more in detail just in the standard PestPac mobile app webinar. There are just a few different IPM specific settings here that I wanted to quickly point out. Those being attach devices to setups. So you have the ability to manage devices at a location level. But what if your customer has multiple services and maybe certain devices belong to certain services? If you turn this setting on, you're allowing your mobile app user to attach specific devices to a specific service setup. So if you feel like that's going to be important, or maybe you work with many customers that have different kinds of recurring services, I would really recommend that you do turn this on. That way you know your devices are being inspected within the right services. Another one here that's worth noting is a couple options down for force scan for device activity. Now, built into the mobile application, as long as your mobile device has a built-in camera, your technicians would have the ability to scan any kind of barcode on that device. I know that many kind of devices will come pre-installed with the barcode label. If they don't, I work with a lot of customers that will purchase a roll of barcode labels, and then they'll start actually putting those on top of the device. And so with that being said, you can take the built-in camera on your mobile device and just easily scan that barcode number. That way your technician doesn't have to fiddle through the mobile app, find the device name, and to be able to really fully inspect it. They could just simply scan it to pull all the information up for that device. So are you going to force your technician to do that, or do you want to make it optional? So if you make it optional, you would just turn this on. If you're looking to force them to do such a thing, we would turn the checkbox on. All right. And the other thing I did want to mention, if for whatever reason you're using like a smartphone or a tablet that doesn't have a built-in camera, the mobile application is compatible with a variety of peripherals, like a mobile socket scanner, where you can connect it via Bluetooth and then use that reader to scan the barcode rather than using a built-in camera right on the device. All right, so those are the two IPM specific access rights that I wanted to quickly highlight. Everything else here is just pretty much baked into the standard version of mobile app without the module itself. All right, so if and when you make any changes to your template here, of course, you'll have to go up to the top and make sure you save your changes. Now, really what you would want to do in this instance is just go through any of the templates that might be assigned to your mobile app users and just make sure you have the appropriate access rights either turned on or turned off appropriately. All right, so let's back out of here. And next up, I wanted to talk about materials and then material groups. Now, material application usage is baked right into the standard version of the mobile app. The reason that we go through materials is because you have the ability to apply a material to a specific area or to a specific device. For example, if you have a bait station installed at a job site, you might be filling that with bait. And in that instance, if you need to actually document or track or just kind of record any kind of bait replenishment or like a refill, you'd be able to do that right through the materials, right? So if I go into materials, Here is where I would have all my chemicals, my pesticides, my products, any bait blocks, anything of that nature that your technicians are using during services. This is where you would come in and add those materials in. So, or you might just have just a standard material here, not necessarily for bait, but it could be a liquid chemical that you're spraying. Here are a number of different examples that I have in my own database. Obviously, yours might look a little bit different. But the point being is that you can link these materials to the specific areas that you set up through IPM and or the devices that you set up as well. So just know that if that material doesn't exist in the current list we're looking at, then your technician in the field won't be able to pick from that material. So you want to come through here, review your current list of materials, and then add any materials that you might be using through IPM. So let's click exit one more time. The other thing that's definitely worth noting is the fact that you must put your materials into material groups. When your mobile app users apply a material, the system will actually ask them to pick from a group, like a category, and then from there it's going to want them to choose the particular material that they're using during that service. So you would come in here, you would create some labels for your groups, and then if I were to back out and go into materials and add a new material or tap into an existing one, we can see where that material group comes into play. So I can just simply right click in here, and then whatever material I'm adding will roll into this particular group. So label this and categorize it in whichever way you think makes the most sense for yourself and for obviously your technicians that are using the mobile application. All right, so next up, let's talk about the target pests lookup table. So if I go towards the bottom and we actually look at the material lookup table section, we're going to find targets, target groups, and then target evidence types. These all pertain to the IPM module. Now what's going to happen is when your technician uses the mobile app and they want to track or input some kind of pest finding or just some pest activity in general, the fields available are going to be pulling from these lookup tables right here. So let's go into target groups first. Same exact concept as your materials and material groups. So in other words, when your technician chooses a target pest, the software wants to pick a target group first and then the actual individual targets. So label this and organize this in whatever way makes the most sense for you guys. But you can come in, you can add as many target groups as you need to. Here are some examples in my own database here. I've broken it down by bugs and insects, fungus, growing organisms, pests, rodents, stinging pests, etc. So you can get as generic as you want or as specific. Just know that this is not where you're going to list out each individual target pest or species for those. That's all going to belong in your targets lookup table. So let's go back. We're going to click on targets. And here is where you get super granular with the actual target pests that you're either managing or controlling during each service. So this will be the full list of targets your technicians can pick from. And what's nice about that target pest is that you can apply a filter right from the desktop. So I can come up here and I could say, I'm only looking at my bugs and insects, and it's only going to give me my bugs and insects. Or I can just simply see my full running list right here. So manage this and organize it in any way you'd like. There's no right or wrong way to approach this. It's just all about how you want to set up your data and then how does that translate into your technicians' inspections and services. All right, and there's one more target related lookup table, and that's going to be the target evidence types. So when we go ahead and actually document pest findings or any kind of pest activity, your technicians will have the ability to choose that they captured a pest, that they cited a pest, or they found evidence of a pest. So when they choose that option of finding evidence, they're going to have a drop down of whatever you put right here. So think about any kind of evidence through, any kind of target evidence type through your services, and you would want to make sure you put those all in here. Now, these don't roll into like a group or a category or anything like that. It's just going to be one list of evidence type that they can pick from. Some really common examples in the sense that you may not see or capture a pest, but you might find some evidence they left behind, maybe like bait eaten, maybe you found a carcass of prey, evidence of debris or droppings, or maybe nesting, molting, you found some spider webbing, whatever the case may be. Just know that your technicians won't be able to just type in whatever they want in the field. I just want to really reinforce here that it's all going to be drawing from the options you create right here. So if I were to click into the web evidence type, we can take a look at how it's set up. It's super simple. You're just going to give it a code name, which is found right here, and then a description for that. And that's it. No limitation or threshold to how many evidence types you can actually create here. All right, so let's exit one more time. And we have a few other lookup tables to talk about. Now we're going to shift this over to the left-hand side of the lookup table page. Now that we've turned on use device tracking in our company setup, we're going to have up to 4 different device-related lookup tables on the left-hand side here. So let's go to device types first. I'm not going to go in alphabetical order here. I'm going to go through what I think is the most sense from a workflow perspective. So I'll click on device types. Here is where I would add every possible device type that my technician is installing or inspecting out in the field. Again, here are just some common examples: glue traps, insect bite traps, catch-all mouse traps, roach bait-in station. You might have like a rodent bait station. So any kind of general device that you're installing, you would come in here and add a device type. Okay, you would just have to give it a device type, a description, and there are some other options here as well. So we're not going to get into this just yet. Maybe I have done things a little bit backwards. If you feel like you should be populating some other lookup tables first that are related to devices, that's totally fine as well. For me, I like to just go ahead and add all the possible device types, and then I'll come in and add the supplemental information. So the reason I'm backing out is I wanted to show you the device questions lookup table and also device comments and the consumables. But let's go into device questions. So you can actually start linking possible questions to specific device types. So think about, what do you want your technician to respond to when they perform a device inspection? Things like, has bait been added to the station, or how many baits were replaced? Is the insect light bulb on? I just have a testing entry here as well. But to add a device question, you would just list out the question in this white field right here, and then what's going to be the response type? Is it going to be more of like a true or false scenario, meaning that it would be a checkbox? Or do you want your technician to type out some kind of text or number into that field? You can only choose one or the other per question. Okay, so we're going to cancel out. You can add as many device questions as you need to. The other thing I did want to mention is that you can choose to have this information show up on your inspection reports. So this could be used internally, but it could also be used externally for your customers as well. So let's back out. Let's go to device comments. This is where I can come in and just create a number of canned comments relating to device inspections. So your technician will have the ability to just manually type out whatever they want on the touchscreen of their device. If it's maybe a lot of verbiage, or maybe you want to limit the amount of typing they're doing, and you find like a frequent set of comments that they're always typing in, you should come in here and start adding those comments, because what can happen is that you can make this available in a drop-down and they could pick every comment rather than just typing it out. The other cool thing about this is that if they choose a comment, they can take that template and then adjust it or tweak it. Maybe they need to add another sentence, or maybe they need to remove a word. So think of these as like comment templates that they can add, and then they're free to make any kind of tweaks as necessary. But to add a comment, again, this is super easy stuff. You're going to come in here and create a comment name, more of like an internal code name. And then the description is what actually pulls into the comment field. And again, these are also things that can show up on the inspection reports that you'd be sending out to your customers. But I can come in. I already have some examples in here. Here's my code name. Here's my description. Like I already mentioned, your technician could even come in and take it one step further and then type out whatever he or she needs to type out. So it's a very kind of flexible feature here. All right, so let's cancel out. Let's go back into the device types lookup table. So again, sorry if this does seem a little bit backwards. Maybe it's not a terrible idea to start with your device comments and then your questions and then start adding your device types, and I'll show you why. So when we go into device types, and if I were to pull up, let's pull up the catch-all mousetrap. We are going to ignore the special type field here. This is for our Centricon certified specialists, where they're using Centricon devices. If you're just using any other kind of generic device, we're going to go ahead and leave that blank. Now below that, we have the option for hide activity observed. So just so that you know, this is typically the defaulted question that's related to every single device that your technician is inspecting. If for whatever reason you don't want that to show up on the device and you want to hide it altogether, you have the ability to do that. So I can say, I do want to hide activity observed. Or maybe you want that to be a question that your technician responds to. And if that's the case, we would uncheck it and look what happens below. We can see that's been added to the list of questions for this device. All right, so you could just basically turn that on, turn it off as needed. You have the ability to show materials even when this device type is inactive. You can specify here that it has a barcode. And then the last option in this first section is where you can designate a specific device color. So I can choose whatever color I'd like. Okay, so now let's start talking about some of the blue links we see below that. So the first one is questions. This is now pulling from my device questions lookup table, and I can mark off saying that these questions need to be responded every single time we have this particular device on a location. Again, I can hide activity observed if I don't want that. And I would go down the list here and, maybe in this case, obviously this is a mousetrap. Why would I want my technician to respond to the question, is the insect light bulb on? That doesn't make any sense. So that's not going to show up on the mobile app. Whatever is turned on will show up, and then your technician has the ability to respond to that. To the right of that is where I can default specific conditions for this device. Now, we're going to get into conditions in just a few short moments. To the right of that is where I can now default specific target pests. So if I always want to pull in a target pest for this specific device type, I can do that. I can come in and say mice, or I can even multi-select. I can come in and do multiple target pests if I had to. So this is very flexible. And then the last option is for materials. And this is where I can just pull in some default materials for this device specifically. All right, otherwise, if we leave that stuff unchecked, you're just giving your technician the ability to associate any of that information at their own discretion while performing that service. All right, so you would come in here, make sure you have the right configuration set up for every single device type. Of course, we're going to save it, and you can do that for everything in this current list. All right, let's exit out. And let's jump to the conditions lookup table. Now again, if you're on this page and you're not seeing this section towards the bottom right for condition lookup tables, it means that you never went up to the company setup, which I talked about earlier in this webinar, and you never turned on the setting for use conditions module. Once you do that, you will then see this particular section right here. So let's revisit what a condition is. Well, a condition is a reportable feature in PestPac. It's specific to the IPM module, where I can start documenting the specific conditions that are causing pest issues at every location. I can check the status of them. I can close out conditions when they're resolved. I can run reports on conditions, and all of that can be communicated with the customer as well. So not only does it work internally for you as you run your business, but it also works externally if I wanted to share that with their any kind of documentation I send out to them through inspection reports. Okay, so let's talk about the 4 different types that we have here for the lookup tables. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is condition groups. This might sound a little bit repetitive, but again, same concept as like your material groups or the target groups. So when your technician adds a condition in the mobile app wants them to pick from a group first before you move on to actually picking the appropriate condition type. So you would come in and add any kind of grouping that you think makes the most sense. I've just put some random groupings in here, so you don't necessarily have to follow my model, but I've broken it down pretty, I think it's pretty digestible here. It's broken down by like environmental groups, maybe a pest group, you might have a rodent group, sanitation, wildlife, etc. Okay, once you add your groups, we're going to start adding the conditions themselves. So we go to conditions. To add a brand new condition, you would just hit add on the top right. Let me show you an existing one that I currently have. And let's click into the very first one for area covered in debris. So let's talk about the different fields that we're currently seeing. So first up, what is the condition name? This is just like a label, like a unique identifier for every condition that you're adding into the system, right? And then below that, we're going to roll that up into a condition group. And I'm picking from my condition group lookup table. Below that, we have a couple hard-coded categories that you can pick from. From this dropdown, I can further put this into a category. I like to think of this as like a subgroup of the current group that you see right here. This is really more so for like reporting and for searching reasons, where I can come in and say, when I run the condition report, I want to check all structural category related conditions in my system, and I can certainly do that. It's not 100% required, but I definitely recommend it. Now below that is where you would have the condition details. Essentially, what are the details of this condition? Always recommend put some kind of verbiage in here. If this was left blank, your technicians would just have to pick a condition detail, or they would have to type it out themselves. So this will be the default condition detail. They can modify this, they can remove some words or add words. So this is a pretty flexible field here, but definitely put some kind of default information. And the same is true for the corrective action. So what is the corrective action to resolve this condition? Once you do that, you're going to be able to pick from a severity type. Is it low, medium, or high? Again, this is just the default severity, so your technician can always make a change if he or she had to. And then right below that is where you set your default responsibility type. Who's responsible for resolving this condition? Is it the customer? Is it maybe the neighbor? Is it you, being the pest management company? Or is that to be determined? So maybe this is, sanitation issue, and primarily it's going to be the customer's responsibility. I would just say it's going to default to the customer. And then we have some blue links here too. So I can now, if I wanted to, paste in some existing condition details from that lookup table. I can click condition detail. Watch what happens here. This was just basically appended. It's been added. Or I can, without going back and forth to that lookup table, once I add this in, I could say I actually want this to be part of the condition detail lookup table. So I can just type in whatever, testing, and say add to lookup table. You give it a name, press OK. Oh, let's try one more time. Test 2. Cool, so that's been successfully added. And now that entry is going to belong in the condition detail lookup table. Watch what happens. There it is. So test number 2, which is what I just created. Same is true for the corrective action. I'm basically just creating like my library of corrective actions. As I'm setting up this condition, I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone and just get that into its dedicated lookup table. All right, so let's go ahead and save that. Click on exit. If as like a standalone feature you wanted to manage or add the condition details and the corrective actions, you can just jump right to that specific lookup table. And I mean, the information is exactly the same here. I can click into an existing one, I can edit that, or I can add a brand new entry if I had to. All right, so remember, if you do this on the desktop now, you are going to set your technician up for success because it just means there's less typing needed on their touchscreen of their device. So I definitely recommend coming in here and doing as much as you can. All right, great. We have one more lookup table before I jump over to the next topic. And this last lookup table is called location templates. It's going to be found on the left-hand side. It's in alphabetical order, and we have location templates right here. So location templates primarily work with different area templates that you might want to set up with your locations in your database. So you might service specific properties that have like a similar blueprint, right? Or like a similar structure, or just similar rooms and areas that you're constantly servicing. So rather than your technicians or even you individually adding every area of every location, you can create a template and then you can apply that template to one location or multiple locations if you had to. So I've set up a number of different examples here, depending upon what kind of work you do. If you just do residential, you might create a template for a ranch style house, or maybe a 2-story house, or maybe apartment complexes. You can just create this in any way you'd like. Let me show you. Let's just do residential building. This will be a good one to show you. So this is what my current template looks like. So you're going to come in here, you're going to give it a template name, which is just a unique identifier for that template, and you're going to begin adding areas and then sub areas. So you really have to think about what areas are my technicians usually servicing, and then you're going to create this hierarchy of areas right from here. So if I wanted to add a parent area, I can do that right now. I could say, we'll just do driveway. You don't have to put a description, but I'll just put that anyway. You don't have to do this either, but this is more so for reporting and for searching again, where I can now associate this area with an area type. This is pulling from your areas type lookup table. And let me just put it into the exterior. Now you could associate a barcode with an area. I don't see it too often, but I've worked with some customers that might put a barcode label somewhere, maybe on a wall or in a hallway somewhere, or maybe like on a door. So that way, when your technician arrives at the job site, they can just quickly scan maybe the barcode on the door when they enter that area, and it pulls up the area and they can do all their activities on the mobile app right from there. If you don't do that at all, you would just bypass this barcode label. And we'll go ahead and click on save. So anything aligned all the way to the left here indicates it's a parent area. If you see like an indent, like we can see exterior and then backyard and front yard, this represents sub areas that belong to this parent area. And if I had to, I can now do maybe a sub area of a sub area. I could say under porch, right? Put in the necessary information. So you could see how we're building this out. And it's really creating like a file path for the area. So just keep in mind when your technician is doing the inspection on the mobile app, they're going to tap into the exterior, which is going to reveal the backyard and front yard. And then he or she can tap into the front yard, and that's going to reveal under porch, and so on and so forth. So hopefully that gives you like a nice understanding of how that will work. And then obviously how specific you want to get with all of these areas. But in other words, you come in here, create your location template as you need to, and then I'll obviously show you how you can apply the template to one customer or to multiple customers en masse. Okay, so let's exit out of here. Now I didn't show you this, but to add a brand new template, it's just as easy as clicking on Add Template here. When you do that, I said before, you have to give it a name. So this isn't asking for like the area itself. It's asking for the template name. with a description, and then you're going to start building your areas from there. So just know that's how that particularly works. And if you did want to choose a like a default area for all new locations added into your system, you can do that as well. Maybe you just service like one type of customer. Maybe just all, maybe you created like a one generic residential area template, and you want that for all customers going forward. I can do that by going into my menu, and then under settings we have company setup. And then under the section for defaults for new account, we can see the area template option right here. So I can pull from this dropdown, and this is my listing of location templates from that lookup table we just visited. And I can come in and say, all new accounts going forward are going to automatically have that residential template, or whichever one you end up choosing. If you want greater control over which location every which template every location gets, then you would typically leave it blank here. And then when you add a new customer, you're going to have the same option right here for area template. So depending upon the property it is, I can come in and just say, this is a fast food restaurant, so I want them to get the fast food template. So it's just as easy to manage it that way as well. All right, so I'm going to cancel out of here. Let's start talking about actually importing those areas to your locations. So I'm going to navigate over to one of my existing locations. And to work with areas and devices for one location at a time, you'll go down towards the bottom, and we have this gold button for areas and devices. So let's go ahead and click on that. This is going to bring you to the areas and device tree map. Any existing areas and devices will obviously be listed here, but for this case, there is not. This is a brand new customer I just added in. My technician has never serviced them before, and I didn't choose a default template as well. And I can confirm all that by clicking on Expand All, and you're left with just one generic area. I can even show inactive to confirm there's no inactive areas or devices here, which there's not. Okay, perfect. So my next step is to import this into the location. So I can click on Tools on the top right and click on Import Areas. So when I do that, I'll be met with two different options. I can choose from a template, which we now know how to manage and create, or I can copy it from another location. So if I know there's another location in my database that has like the same exact physical format and layout as this location, I can copy it from one to another, which is a really cool feature. Otherwise, if you want to just leverage the templates that you've already created, then just choose the template option. You would select, and you're going to pull from that list. So I can come in here and I'll say, we're going to do residential building, press OK. Then we're going to click on Next. And then we have to tell PestPac, where are we placing this template? We can see on the left-hand side, it's actually displaying and breaking down the template that we're about to import. On the right-hand side is where I can say it's going on the root level. So if this is like a brand new location with nothing on it, it's always going to show root, and that's going to be your only option, which is normal behavior. So we're going to select root. At the very bottom of that, if for whatever reason there were existing unused areas, I can now deactivate those while I'm actually importing this new template. Otherwise, in this scenario, it doesn't make any sense for me to choose that because I don't have any existing areas. So let's just go ahead and click on Finish. We're going to click on Finish. Everything will be uploaded automatically. And now watch what happens when I click on Expand All. Bam, there we go. So there is the template that I've already created, and I've just simply imported that into this particular location. Now, the next time my customer goes to service their account and they pull up the IPM module features, they're going to see these existing areas. And this is really, really awesome because you're giving your technicians the ability to not only manage and service and inspect those areas, but they can edit them as well. If for whatever reason an area doesn't apply to this location, they can remove it as long as it doesn't have any history. They can add a brand new area, or they can create a sub area to an existing area, right? So you're really giving your technicians a great deal of flexibility around how they manage the areas and devices. Now, if I wanted to make some changes right from the desktop, I can certainly do that too. So maybe I had imported this template and I just found out, maybe they don't have a backyard at all. I can come in, I can click on Edit on the top right. And as soon as you click on Edit, I can go ahead and start right-clicking on any of the existing areas that we currently see. So I can right-click, I can say Add Area, I can add a device, I can edit the area, or I can deactivate it and try to remove it altogether. So we're going to deactivate it, and now it's highlighted in red, which means that when my technician does service that account, they're not going to see that particular area. But I can come in, maybe if I knew ahead of time that we've installed or we're going to install some devices, I would right-click one more time, add device, give it a device name, station 1. What's going to be the device type, which we now know is pulling from the device type lookup table. I'm just going to pick something random. Now, I don't know if you would know the barcode number, but if you did, you'd be able to plug that in here. And this is where you can just go down the line and start configuring all of that. And we can see that device is listed right there. I can also start moving things around too, which is really cool. So maybe station number 1 belongs in the kitchen. I can drag and drop. So I'm going to drag and dump this right onto the kitchen. And look what just happened. Now it belongs right underneath kitchen. I can collapse certain areas if I want to hide the content underneath it. I can hide like a parent area. I can collapse all, expand all, so on and so forth. So that's just some of the navigation and usage for that. I also wanted to show you another really great tool. So if we go back up to the top right, I wanted to show you where you can add multiple devices all at once. So first up, we're going to have to say what's going to be the new device type here. And I'll right click and let's do insect light traps. What's going to be the quantity of insect light traps that we're installing? And obviously, what area are these going to be placed at? So let's do the front yard. We're going to say 5. What's going to be the starting name? And I'll do ILT for insect light trap. I'll put the number 1. If you're putting barcodes in subsequent order from the roll or from the sheet that you get, it's very likely that those numbers are just going to increase by 1. So what I can do is I can come in and say the first starting barcode will be 7788. And then when I add them, I'm going to click on save and then watch what happens. Let's expand all. And the system was wise enough to keep my naming scheme here. So we have ILT1, ILT2, ILT3, so on and so forth. And let's take a look at the barcode numbers. So it started with 7788, and I have 7789, 7790, etc. If any changes needed to be made, like I said, you can do it right from the desktop by clicking on Edit, or your technicians can also do it from the mobile app. All right, now let's go into the concept around adding a template to multiple locations. And this would be really great if you've been a PestPac user for a long time, but you just recently signed up with the IPM module, and you already have, 500, 1,000 customers into your database, and none of them have a template for areas. So we wouldn't expect you to go into every location, come into tools and import the area, so on and so forth. That would be super time consuming. So we've provided you with a way to create a list of multiple customers in your database and then take that list and apply a template to all of them. Super easy to do. So let's close out of here and let's go back to my main screen. So we're back at the home page. Now my home page is actually set to the advanced search. You might have a different home page, and if that's the case, you can just click on Advanced Search on the left sidebar right here. But this is the place you want to start when you're creating a new list of customers. And that's because we have to use a number or maybe just one search criteria to drill down our results and our matches for that list. So I'm going to use this one common example of finding a particular type of customer. So I'm going to right click into type. And let's pull in, let's try food establishment. Hopefully we got a couple results here. Of course, I can search by basic information such as account numbers, company, last name, street, or maybe I want to pull in just a specific list of customers that reside in a specific city. I can do all that. Below is where you can start pulling from your lookup tables. I can even say I want to check all my food establishments in a particular county. The more search criteria we choose here, the less matches that we'll get. So I'm just going to leave the food type selected, and I'll click on the search icon on the top right. Oh man, so I didn't get any matches. I'm really not too sure why. Let's go back one more time. Let's try a different type. And my apologies, guys. Obviously, this is a test database here, so I was kind of blindsided by that. Here we go. Okay, so I used the commercial type, and it looks like we have 13 matches. And let's say I have a commercial template that I've created in my location template lookup table. First, we have to create a list of these customers, and then I'll show you how you can apply that template. So we're going to click on Add to List on the top right. We're going to give it a list name. So let's say commercial locations 2018. And then from there, I can choose the list type of dynamic, which means that the list will be updated based on the search criteria I've selected, or I can freeze the list and make it so that it's static. Either way, obviously that's up to you which one you want to choose based on how you're managing your list, but we're going to leave it set to a dynamic list, and we'll press OK. Now, as soon as I do that, it's going to bring you to the list management screen. Now, what happens if by accident I log out, or if I click over to this location and I lost that list? How do I get back to that list so I can actually apply the template? Well, that's super easy. We're going to go back to our menu on the top left. We're going to click into Sales and Marketing, and then click on List Management. This is where you can revisit the lists you've already created in your database. And I can pick from any of my available lists that are available to me. So let's find that commercial locations 2018. We'll click on Go, and we're brought back to those same 13 locations. What's going to be my next step? Well, my next step is to actually apply that location template. And we can see that gold button right here. We're going to apply location template. What's going to be the template we're actually applying to those locations? And I'll be able to choose from the options right here. We're going to do, let's just say food. I can deactivate existing location areas if they are already on the location itself, or I can exclude accounts with this template too. Maybe I've actually, based on these couple of matches that I currently have in the list, some of these might have very unique physical layouts, and I don't want to mess with the template I've already put in there. So if they already have the food template and I've modified it for them, let's say we're going to exclude them altogether. Obviously, that's not needed at all. If you wanted to, you could even go to the right-hand side and just select or deselect specific locations here to apply to, right? So I can just go down the list. Maybe these two customers have, specific needs or specific areas, and I'm going to leave them alone. So I have full control over all of that. Once I've reviewed, I've confirmed the list of locations that are getting this template, I would just go ahead and click on Apply Template. Now, I'm not going to do that because most of these accounts are already set up, but once you click on Apply Template, it's going to say, are you sure you want to apply location template to all selected accounts? You would click on OK, and that's about it. And then if you were to go to visit their location and you click on areas and devices, you will see that template. All right. So that wraps up our course for today. I do hope that you've learned a lot here, that what we went through actually makes sense in terms of how all this setup here is going to translate into the mobile application. As always, if you have any kind of questions about what we covered today, feel free to bring any questions to your onboarding specialist if you're in the onboarding process. If you're not, feel free to contact our support team, and they would be more than happy to assist you with any kind of questions or provide any clarification around what we discussed today. So I want to thank you all so much for joining me today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next PestPac University webinar. Take care, everyone.